Good morning, everybody. So it's a great pleasure to be here, and I want to start by congratulating everyone involved and us all on the results we have gotten from the projects that were launched 2 years ago, and we are seeing the results of that here today, and we view that as a marker for us to continue into the future. As mentioned, what I want to talk about today is the role of education and innovation in this environment we're talking about, which is the bioeconomy of the future, and how can we make this all sustainable. Now, my background has been briefly mentioned already. I spent 16 years in Silicon Valley, watching through the invention of the World Wide Web, the rise of the dot-com, the fall of the dot-com, and the rise of IT technology as a foundation for everything that we are doing today, including the development of Twitter. Now, I also spent 10 years working at NASA, developing a wide variety of technologies for controlling spacecraft. But there are two things I wanted to mention in this context. One is, when you're working on something like this, an exploration rover working on the surface of Mars, sustainability becomes your primary driver. You don't have any connection to anything else. This has to be entirely sustainable in terms of all aspects of operations, including energy. Now, in the research we have been doing there, we have not yet found anything that is biological, but we continue searching, and we hope we find something. For the last 10 years, roughly speaking, I have worked at a university, Reykjavik University, here in the city of Reykjavik, where we have been developing new methods for education, innovation, etc. I've been a contributor and a participant in the innovation scene in Iceland, and as mentioned, I have been working on policy. The reason I mention this background is because this is the point of view from which I'm approaching the subject matter here today. So what I want to talk about is, of course, touch briefly on the need for real sustainability in our bioeconomy and development for the future. But I'm not going to go into the biological processes. That's not my expertise. But rather, what progress have we made in the past? Where have we really excelled at moving forward? And how can we use those lessons to drive the development of the bioeconomy into the future, which is something that very much needs. And the lessons that we have learned is that innovation and education are at the heart of progress. Now, bioeconomy is the key to sustainability for us all and the world in the long term. And others have talked about this in much more depth, but I want to leave you with 3 aspects of this to think about. Now, first of all, we, all humans, we are biological creatures. We need the bioeconomy just as part of our life. We need food, we need all of these things to sustain ourselves. Secondly, a lot of our industry today is based on biological processes that we need to close, we need to make sure are sustainable and minimize the harmful impact of those processes on the environment. And thirdly, bioeconomy, biological processes, biotechnology is also part of the solution for a wide variety of other issues that we have not been solving in a biological fashion today, but may lead us to being able to do so in a sustainable manner in the future. So these are 3 big tasks that we have in this context. And we should acknowledge that we have made progress. There's no question about it. We have really made progress. We're using biomass in a variety of things that we haven't been using before. We're using it more efficiently. We're getting more out of it. We are, at least in some areas, really reducing the negative impacts that our use of resources is having on the environment. And through the research that we have been doing in universities and research institutions all over the world, we have a much better understanding of the world, of the biology, of the processes that are involved. But let's not get too far ahead of ourselves because we have a lot left to do. We are still overusing natural resources by a huge margin. A lot of our processes are still very inefficient, and they're not closed. We haven't closed the loop yet on so many of these. We've made improvements, but we cannot say that we've closed the loop, and we cannot say yet we have maximized efficiency We're far from it. Energy production and energy use is one of our biggest holes in terms of moving towards sustainability and one of the biggest challenges that we need to tackle. But there's an aspect to this as well that I want to mention, which is just the behavior of human beings. This does not just involve technical solutions or biological process solutions. It requires us all to then also adapt our behavior or for the solutions to match our desired behavior so as to close the loop. So what is needed to make progress in this? Well, first of all, we need the manpower. We need educated people. We need smart people who can help solve the problems. But we don't just need some educated people. We need the right mix, the right kind of education. We need training so that people know how to innovate, find new solutions, develop them and bring them to market. And finally, we need the environment, a supportive environment to support this. Now, I'm going to name a few examples as drivers for how to approach this all from something we may know, all of us. I'm biased. I'm from the information technology industry myself. But the progress that has been made in this area is nothing short of astounding. There aren't too many decades ago where the only computers anybody had access to were huge machines in banks or centralized locations that could do very limited things. Today we're seeing technology like virtual reality, interactive, intelligent agents working with elementary students in a biophilia-inspired way of learning about physics. We're working on self-driving cars. This is huge change. Talking about cars, we have made progress there as well. We have gone from gas guzzlers to electrical cars. This is one of the newer ones. It has a range of over 300 kilometers and does not carry the price tag of a Tesla and is a step forward in the right direction. We have been making progress also in the biological area. We take wood, for example. There is a lot of talk about forestry. One small aspect of that is in certain areas using wood for energy, heating, or electricity. But one of the things that we have to think about when we're making progress in these areas is what is involved in this. Of course, in order to have a sustainable forest that can be utilized for something, be it products or energy, it needs to be the right mix of trees, the right surroundings, done in a sustainable manner. We need to develop the combustion technology if we're going to use this for energy so that it's a clean combustion and doesn't leave anything open in the loop from carbon dioxide into the trees and back out when they're burnt. We need new types of heaters, new pellets, new ways of doing things, and we need a new supply chain to provide those who want to use this as a source of heat and energy to receive the material that they have. And of course, in Iceland, we have the example of the fisheries. In order to get to the point where we are now, where we're closer to sustainability than most nations, we need to understand the fish stock. We need to have the scientific know-how about how it works. We need to have sustainable catch limits and some way of enforcing it. But at the same time, we need to be able to increase the value. We need to be able to develop new products from waste, as we have seen before. And finally, we need to market these things. It's not just enough to build the products. The adage, build it and they will come, really doesn't work in the world. You need to find a way to get it out there. And just to show how massive this impact is, here's a graph done from the analysis of the ocean cluster some years ago, showing on the left-hand side the amount of fish caught. We can see that in 2011, it's less than half of what was caught in 1981, 30 years before. But if you look at the value, it has more than doubled. What's behind this is what's the driver for what we need to make progress. There needs to be a need. There needs to be something that tells us we need to progress. In this case, it was fish stocks were being depleted, and our economic foundation was at risk. We needed the expertise. We needed the educated people to actually develop new ways of controlling, to develop new products, to develop new methods, etc. And we needed a lot of innovation. Collagen doesn't just fall out of the skin of fish. It's an innovative process of finding how can we get it out efficiently. And then, of course, you have to market it. All of these require innovation. And finally, this doesn't work if you don't have the environment, if you don't have the support, if you don't have what supports the drive for education and innovation. This is what I want to look at when we talk about how do we educate and how do we support innovation to the future for sustainable bioeconomy. Now, it's tempting to look at the traditional way of educating and say, of course, we need to teach science and technology, and if we just have enough people who understand the complexities of very difficult biological processes and understand how to control them with a lot of high technology, then we'll be all set. No, we won't be. Now, this is all good. This is necessary. We certainly need the fundamentals in science and technology, but we need more than that. One key thing is we need to teach and train people in innovative thinking. Not just take the solutions that are given in the textbooks or from the teacher. We need to teach them from the very, very beginning, from primary school, to trust themselves to develop new solutions. And then as they advance, how do we teach them to develop the solutions to the point that when they get to a university, they can take their ideas and implement them. And we need to be interdisciplinary. This is tricky. We need to be able to create and develop manpower that has the ability and capacity to connect between areas. As I mentioned before, the drivers aren't just a technical solution. It's also connecting it with the need, with the society, the marketing, and all aspects of it. What I want to mention is that there are actually many, many ways of doing this in education today. Even though sometimes universities and educational institutions can be a little bit on the conservative side, there are so many ways of developing step by step. Simplest thing is move to problem-based learning. Take things, CDIO stands for Conceive, Design, Implement, and Operate, which is a methodology of teaching technical subjects where instead of just solving the problem on a piece of paper and turning that in, you take the problem, you implement it, and you actually have to operate it in the real world. This is a great way for an expert in one area to understand the interactions with human beings and with the world around them. Another thing you can do is teach innovation classes. Bring people together from different subjects. Technical experts, business experts, law experts, biology experts. Bring them all together and make them work on something innovative, developing a new company or a new product. There's a well-known methodology, major, minor. You take two subjects and you mix them so that you become an expert in one, but you also have know-how of the other. And so the most valuable people you can find in the business world today are the ones who understand both business and information technology. You can also bring in programs that are specifically focused on particular subjects, like innovation for the fisheries, a specific program that brings together technology, business, and understanding of biology of the fisheries industry to train a new group of people who can develop new products and new methods for the fisheries industries. And you can put up whole programs that take all of the different aspects from different subjects, and you will hear more from the head of this program, which is taught at the University of Iceland, Brynhildur Davíðsdóttir, who has been running this, where they take all of the different aspects of different subjects and bring them together in a sustainability program focused on the environment and resources. So all of these are ways forward to bring education closer to what we really need so that we have the right manpower to drive the development for a sustainable bioeconomy and for a sustainable world at large. Briefly about innovation. When we talk about innovation, it's tempting to be looking only at the initial product, the new biological process that is going to solve everything, the new technical gadget that is going to solve everything. This is very tempting to look at. But this is akin, and this is analogous, to just writing your solution on a piece of paper and turning it in and expecting the world somehow to change. The reality is, if you're going to develop something that is innovative and changes the world, you need to take it through everything. The new processes, the new technology, you need to take it through the new connections to how do you sell this? How do you talk to people about this? How do you make people understand what all of these issues are about? How do you create products that people want? You have to somehow bring this process into people's lives and show them this benefits you and the world in this way. And you need to market it. I don't know how many solutions have been developed, even implemented, but failed because they didn't receive any market, nobody wanted them. And finally, and this is maybe the most important part, if we have taught people how to innovate, we have given the fundamentals of the science and the technology and the social sciences that they need to move forward, and we have taught them the necessary interdisciplinary bridges so that they can understand how things connect together, then we still have the environment. How do we create an ecosystem around all of this so that it's receptive to novelty? People are remarkably conservative when it comes to their daily lives. How can we bring new things to them? How can we get people to take new sustainable products and accept them in the same way as they accept buying a new iPhone every year? How do we get to that point? We need to be supportive of testing things. Iceland and the Nordic countries are a wonderful way, and these projects that we've been working on over the last few years here are an excellent example of let's use the Nordics, let's use Iceland or smaller places as test beds. I mean, it's very easy to take a small place and just make it completely electric, make it completely something. Let's try things. But for that, we need funding. We need to understanding from the government, private businesses, and everybody else that this requires funding. And finally, in order for us to see that it all works and help us drive forward, we need to measure progress that we made. And if we do all of this, if we bring together the know-how through education and the inspiration, capacity, and the environment for driving innovation, then we can make real progress of moving towards a sustainable bioeconomy and a sustainable world. And so let's continue on the path that we've been and really, really change the world. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ari. Now, it's open for questions. Please just give us or hold free over there, which has the microphone. Asain, raise your hand if you want to ask a question. We will start with a couple that came in on Twitter. It's not that we're just on Facebook. We're really trying to keep up with what's going on there. Now, let's just start with, because you say you need the right type of education. So the question from Brian Alexander is, what is the correct mix of education? Does it mean that certain disciplines should shrink while others expand? Which ones? How can we know that?
This is an excellent question, and this is something that comes up regularly when you talk about especially the politics of education. Education is, in all countries where I have been, limited in funding. So you have limited resources. How do you choose how to best spend that capacity? It's tempting to think about we are going to predetermine by a centralized committee, this shall be how people will be educated. It's not a good way to go. Much better way to go is to keep the system agile, keep it flexible. So be willing to respond and be capable of responding to new needs, to new drivers. Information technology, for instance, puts this strain on a system that you need to move from needing relatively few IT people to needing masses of IT people. Make a system that can respond to that. But also make a system that breaks down the walls between institutions and between departments and disciplines, so that you can quickly create new ways of connecting between different disciplines and respond to the need. So instead of the education system being a predetermined mechanism that says we shall graduate X% technical people, X% this, make it a flexible system that responds to the needs of the environment and of the businesses and of the society that we have.
Thank you very much. We have another question from Sveinn Margesson. How to include farmer and fisher experience, practical approach and risk assessment in bioeconomy related education?
Mm-hmm. Excellent question. The first thought that comes to my mind, and a method that has served very well to build a bridge between the expertise study that is inevitably going on in a university with the real life experience of, say, a farmer or a fisherman or somebody who is dealing with an uncertain environment and uncertainty and risk in, be it their crops, the ocean, or what have you. It's to do the real projects. It's to actually connect people during their study time with real projects that have applications in this area. You can connect people learning about biological processes or about innovation in product development with the farmers, with the fishermen. So the project actually gets connected to the real elements that they have to deal with. Because solutions, and this shows itself again and again and again, solutions that are developed in isolation without connection to the world rarely get adapted.
Thank you. Now, because you're the president of Reykjavik University, of course, you get questions related to education. I want to combine two here. One, because you seem very focused on the market and the IT and the technology, and of course that's the field of university. But, you know, just what is the place of the humanities and the social sciences in this STEM plus business future? And connected to that, question from a young, well, almost still student. So how do you just, no matter which studies these are, how do you spark students' interest in bioeconomy and environmental studies?
Very good question. So let's start with the first one. I will admit, and you know, that's why I gave you the introduction to my background. My experiences are from Silicon Valley, from IT, from NASA. I'm a tech guy. So my examples come from there. That does not, I do not mean to imply that there is less importance in subjects such as the humanities and the social sciences. And I want to reiterate what I said. How you connect the solutions that you're developing in one area to another area is the key to success. You cannot possibly develop a solution that changes the way that human beings behave, the way that we want to operate day to day, without having a firm understanding of the humanities, understanding of the social sciences, understanding what makes humans tick, how does it fit into how people make decisions, how does it fit into the psychology of people, how does it fit into the desires and worries of people, how does it fit into how you make people change their behavior. This is really all interconnected. So just because my background is in a certain area, I really want to make it absolutely clear, and I wanted to make it clear in the presentation. It needs to be connected, it needs to be interdisciplinary. That's how we made progress. Now, how do we inspire young students to tackle these? They are actually amazingly, especially the young generation today, are amazingly capable of inspiring them themselves. They are much more seeking driven. They go out and get the know-how. They go out and get the inspiration for how they learn, how they work, how they study, how they travel, how they do things. So what we should focus on is not how to tell them how to do it, but show them the opportunities. Bring up the issues, bring up the opportunities, and open basically the set of problems, open that up for people to look at and to get in touch with. One of the things that you sometimes hear when we're talking about bioeconomy, when we're talking about improved use of biological processes, and especially if you start talking about biotechnology, a lot of people shrink back. This is complex. It has huge chemical formulas in it. It has very complex piping and machinery. It requires understanding of something, cold and slimy if it's a fish. It requires, something that is not my world. But this isn't the reality of what bioeconomy is. Bioeconomy is our day-to-day living. So how bring that forward and bring that to them in the same way the technical industry has been so successful in bringing the new ideas, new needs forward for technical solutions. We can do the same thing with biotechnical solutions with the bioeconomy. And once we bring it to the table, they have all of the drivers and the challenge-seeking capacity that is needed for them to then contribute. That's my view.
Thank you very much. There's still one more question through Twitter. It's from Lisa Sarenma. What would be the role of the service sector in the bioeconomy?
It's a sector that's growing fastest. The majority of jobs being created in Iceland are in the service sector. So,
This will all be a very interesting development over the next 20 to 30 years. And this is a question that I do not have a clear-cut answer for, because we are actually at the cusp of such huge changes that really will impact the service center, among other sectors, service sector. So what we are seeing today are self-driving cars and a variety of different artificial intelligence-based autonomy and automation. These things will have huge impacts on how things are done, especially in the service sector. How the service sector will develop is very hard to predict. But one of the things that I think we should be looking at when we talk about the service sector and people who want to apply themselves there is, let's focus service sector development and manpower development on the aspects that really require human involvement. So that has to do with creativity, responsiveness, experience, and human understanding and human interaction. How that fits into the bioeconomy from the service sector side is in the same way that it would service any other sector, which is to be the human link between what we need and something that can be provided to us. But the service sector as at large, even though it's the one that is growing the fastest in Iceland today, will see massive changes in the coming years and decades, both due to the bioeconomy and also to the continued development of the technology.
thank you very much.